Okay. So for this webinar, I want you to write down 4 words from this quote. Empower in the first line. Write that down. Emotional in the second line. Write that down. And in the 4th line, I want you to write down the word advocates. And in the last line, I want you to write down the word trust. Empower, emotional, advocate, and trust. All right. Those are the 4 cornerstones of the work that you need to do with your dog as a foundation before you ever start to teach him to perform tasks. Okay. So let's talk next about feelings and where they begin and why it's important to start working with our dogs, to start with feelings, because feelings begin in the body. And you have reactive dogs that bark excessively, that lunge on the leash, that react to strangers, to guests coming in the house. You have dogs that express their feelings in a lot of different ways. And those feelings start in the body, in the nervous system. A dog's nervous system is a lot like ours. So you're going to hear me make comparisons a lot. Let's start with the 3 parts of the nervous system that impact the dog's behavior. We have the parasympathetic nervous system, and that is a state of feeling restful, relaxed. The dog, it's called rest and digest because that's where an animal is comfortable eating. Imagine yourself being very, very stressed, very anxious, worried about something. Think about the last time you were stressed and anxious and worried about something. Did you feel like eating? Probably not. And if you offer food to a dog that's stressed, they may take the food, but they're not enjoying it. Most of the time, dogs will refuse food. You know, sometimes when I take my dogs to the vet's office, they'll have a little container of treats and they'll offer the dog the treats. A sure sign of whether the dog is stressed about being at the vet or relaxed is whether or not they take the treats. If they refuse food, they're stressed. So parasympathetic nervous system is where we're really relaxed and calm. Everything is fine. We feel safe. The sympathetic nervous system is where we go on alert. It's a very important part of the nervous system because it's connected to survival, isn't it? If we detect a threat, we need to go on alert. And we need to be ready to mobilize, to move away from the threat or to take action to minimize that threat. So the ability to mobilize is a very important part of that sympathetic nervous system. If the threat is overwhelming, if we are forced to fight it, but it's an overwhelming force, if we can't escape the threat, then we start to go into what's called shutdown. And shutdown is freezing, immobilizing, disassociating, and collapsing. So if you look at the pictures of these 3 little dogs over on the side, in the top one, that dog looks happy and relaxed. Looks easy. Just the whole expression and the body of that dog. In the middle picture, the dog is alerting to something. Not yet afraid, but alert. A dog that is alert and aware of a potential threat, a dog that is what I call emotionally intelligent, is able to assess that threat. Is it really a threat, or is it just something different? If it's something different in my environment, I can notice it and then move on, because I have the ability to move away from it. If it's something that is not pleasant, I want to be able to move away from it. If it's scary and dangerous, I want to be able to move away from it quickly. I want to be able to run away from it. But if I feel trapped, what I'm going to do is appease that thing. I'm going to look helpless and weak. And that's the fawning behavior. And maybe that scary thing will ignore me and not hurt me because I look helpless and weak. And that's when you see dogs cowering, shrinking, rolling over on their backs, licking their lips, lowering their heads, doing all of those things. If dogs can't escape, they're going to shut down. Having a dog on a leash, the leash removes that ability for the dog to escape, and that's why we often see dogs resorting to that fight behavior where they want to present themselves as dangerous. So you'll see them barking, growling, lunging, trying to look threatening and dangerous because they know that they can't escape. Of course, we need to keep our dogs on leashes, but we need to understand where that leash reactivity comes from, because there are things that we can do to avoid it. So understand those three emotional states: relaxed and enjoying things, parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetic, going on alert, and shut down, that's freezing, immobilizing, where the dog looks shut down. Now, one thing I want you to be aware of is that stillness is characteristic of resting and relaxing. It's also characteristic of immobilization and collapse. We can sometimes confuse the two. So if you expose your dog to something, you take your dog out to a busy event, and there's a lot of commotion going on, you may see a dog just sitting quietly. And you might look at the dog and say, oh, look at that. He's fine. He's relaxed. He's not upset at all. And you could be right. Maybe the dog is not upset at all. But you want to ask yourself, is the dog in this freeze shutdown mode where he's just being very, very still and quiet and immobilizing himself because he's shutting down? Just something to consider and something to ask. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about another one of my little dogs. And this is Junior, and you may have heard me mention Junior before. I want to tell you Junior's story because it's going to help you understand what you can do for your dogs when they're distressed. So Junior passed away some time ago. He lived a long and happy life, but he did when he was younger. When he was maybe 1 or 2 years old, he had a traumatic experience. He processed it as trauma. Another dog might have processed this same experience as something fun. So let me explain what it was. Junior was born to do agility. He absolutely loved it. He's a little tiny thing. He weighed about 5 pounds, and you can see the height of the jump is only like 4 inches off the ground. He loved agility. One day, we were at an agility practice event, and someone let their great big, huge, fluffy dog off the leash, which was against the rules. They weren't supposed to do that. And Junior was running around on the agility course, and that great big dog decided he was going to chase Junior. and Junior ran for his life. He outran that great big dog. That's how scared he was. Nothing terrible happened to him physically. The dog didn't catch him. The owner was able to get the owner of the other dog was able to get her dog, and I picked up Junior. And he wasn't injured, but he was scared to death. So he processed that experience as trauma. Now, imagine if the dog that jumped into the agility ring and started to run with him had been another little dog his size, or a dog that he knew and played with. It wouldn't have been traumatic. They probably would have, run around and played and had a good time. And it would not have been a trauma for him. But because it was, number one, a dog he didn't know, number two, a great big dog, number three, startling. I was startled. I didn't expect that. And I'm sure he didn't expect it either. So it was like a shocking, startling experience, put him into high alert, running, escaping, mobilization, running for his life. Fortunately, he didn't have to go into shutdown. Maybe after it was all over with, he could have gone into emotional shutdown. I don't know that. Long story short, it took 2 years of very gently asking him if he was ready to participate in dog events again. And he always had the right to say no. And he did say no on some occasions. And when he said no, that was the answer that I respected. Little by little, he felt safe again. And it was always, the point is that when there's a trauma, when you introduce things that are similar, let me explain a little bit about what would probably have been the wrong path to follow. If I had said, let's desensitize him, let's put him in the agility ring and walk big dogs around the ring, or let's have another great big dog in the ring with him and desensitize him, give him lots of treats, it would have caused him to re-experience that traumatic event. It would have re-traumatized him again and again and again. So desensitization and counter-conditioning would have been the wrong path for him. What I did do instead was take him out of the situation completely and very, very slowly, tiny, tiny steps, ask him if he was ready to do this, 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 and the next thing. If he said he was ready, then we did it. And I evaluated his response. And if he was happy with it, then we continued. If he was not happy with it, if he showed any kind of reluctance at all, then we went back to what we were doing that was pleasant. And that's the process that I recommend for you, because the thing that you need to always keep in mind is that trauma changes the brain. And once that change has occurred, you can't go back. You can introduce other changes that balance out that change, but you can't go back. And that is why I'm going to give you 3 reasons why desensitizing, counter-conditioning your overexcited dog before you address emotional needs is not the issue, is not the solution. So if you have a dog that's afraid of fireworks, if you have a dog that is that reacts badly when you have strangers come into the home, barks and barks at them, exposing the dog to that without first addressing the emotional need is not going to help that dog to process those things. So we're coming into a a time of year when all of those kinds of things are going to start happening. Noise, visitors, food, people offering the dog strange, unfamiliar food. We're going to get to that in a minute too. So let's look at the 3 reasons. Number 1, if you try to make the dog's behavior stop, it's not going to help. So the dog is barking at a guest. Bringing the dog over and having the guest try to make friends with the dog while the dog is saying, no, 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 get back, get away from me. You're too close. You're too close. And the person is reaching out and trying to pet the dog. Making it stop is not the answer. Telling the dog to sit and stay and watch me. In other words, getting compliance in place of consent is not the answer either. If the dog is saying, I don't want that person to come close to me, I don't want to make friends with that person yet, I'm not ready. The dog, before the dog gives his consent, to force compliance without consent is not the answer. And then finally, focusing on tasks instead of what the dog's emotional needs are. In other words, do this, sit and stay, go to your bed, watch me, walk next to me on the leash. Don't wander off, don't sniff, don't explore. Forcing dogs to perform tasks that are not aligned with their emotional needs is not the answer either. So let's look more specifically at these. Number 1, the make it stop myth. Okay. So a dog's emotional needs, if you're trying to manage your dog's behavior and emotional over arousal, and you feel in conflict, then you're missing out on the joy of the dog's companionship. And you're also missing out on an effort to connect with the dog. So if you look at the body language of the dog in this picture, he looks a little distressed, doesn't he? He's not overly excited, but he looks worried. So let's look at this dog now. Safe, peaceful, grounded. This is what we have to aim for before we ask a dog to perform any task. We have to get the dog into a safe place. So if a stranger is coming into the house and they want to make friends with the dog, but the dog is saying, no, you're too close, I don't want you to come into my space, then you need to give the dog an escape route. Remember, in the sympathetic nervous system, mobilization is important. You have to give the dog the opportunity to move away. If the dog wants to retreat, let him retreat. Let him back away. Advise the stranger or the visitor or the guest that your dog is not ready to make friends. Period. End of discussion. You wrote down the word advocate. You are advocating for your dog's emotional needs. You are speaking on behalf of your dog because your dog is saying by his body language, he's trying to move away. He's saying, no, I don't want you to come close to me. I don't know you yet. I need more time to process this. So you are speaking on your dog's behalf. You are advocating for your dog's emotional needs by telling the guest, my dog isn't ready for you to make friends with him. He needs more time. So let's go and just go about our business and do something else. The dog is not ready yet. You allow the dog to retreat. The dog has to feel safe, at peace, and grounded in his physical body before he can learn anything, before he can process anything. So you can do grounding and exercises and feeling of safety and relaxation. You can do those things with your dog when you're alone with your dog and there aren't any other distressful things happening. But here are the things you need to keep in mind. When a dog's nervous system detects danger, whether it's real or not, so the dog is looking at that visitor and seeing danger. Well, it's not real danger. That person doesn't intend your dog any harm, but that doesn't matter. It's how the dog sees it that is important. So when the dog detects danger, the body is in a state of fight, flight, or freeze. The dog can panic and disassociate if he's immobilized, if he's forced to confront something that he perceives as danger. So when we work with reactive dogs, we don't work with them by forcing them to confront the things that they're afraid of. We work with how they're processing their environment. And that's another whole set of activities. And I know there are some of you here with me now who are working with me already, and you know that this is a step-by-step process. We get the dog out of the situation where he's scared, because we can't work with him if he's panicky, if he's disassociating. We need to work with him when he's calm. And there are a whole set of activities that we work on. The other thing we have to keep in mind is that denying a dog the freedom to naturally express his felt emotion. So if he's barking at the stranger and we say, be quiet, sit, stay, and we deny him the freedom to express what he feels, and we dismiss those authentic feelings by using management, redirection, or avoidance, it's not going to produce a long-term solution, because buried feelings grow. They don't go away. So if you suppress those feelings, you don't make them go away. And remember, trauma changes the brain. By suppressing feelings, are you re-traumatizing the dog? Are you creating a situation where the dog is going to re-experience the trauma? And keep in mind that trauma is not what we decide it is, it's what the dog feels it is. So back to Junior's experience, if another little dog that he knew and played with all the time jumped into the ring and started running around with him, it wouldn't have been a trauma. But it was because of the details of that experience. He perceived it as trauma. Okay, your expectations have to be aligned with your dog's needs. So if your dog's big feelings conflict with your expectations, so back to the visitor again, your dog is seeing that visitor as a threat. That's what he sees. We can't, say, well, he shouldn't see that. Well, maybe not, but that doesn't matter because that's what the dog sees at that moment. Your expectations might be, you want your dog to make friends with the people who are coming. You want your visitors to see your dog as this sweet, friendly dog, but your dog is scared. Your expectations and your dog's big feelings are in conflict. And when that happens, you can't expect your dog to just stop his big feelings. You can't expect that training is going to supersede those big feelings, because feelings aren't trained, they're felt. So the dog feels what he feels, and we need to learn how to respect that, I should say. All right, here's an example of the kind of things. These are all the things that might happen during holidays that might create big feelings. Oh my goodness, the food, the drink, the parties, gifts, gifts that are wrapped, gifts that are unwrapped, all the decorations, the plants that you bring into the house, visitors and house guests, children. Oh my goodness, if your dog is not used to children, and they're, kids are going to get wired and riled up during the holidays. It's just part of it. They're going to be very active. They're going to scream and yell and run around. There's going to be noise. If you have a noise-sensitive dog, people talking loud, music, the noise of crowds, fireworks, all kinds of movement, travel. If you're planning on traveling, is your dog going to be home alone, or is your dog going to go with you? How well does your dog travel? Does travel get him excited, or does he cope with it really well? Different kinds of activities, not only parties, but different things that are going on, visitors dropping in, routines that are disrupted, smells everywhere. The smells of the different items that you bring into the house, the people that come into the house. Smells are everywhere. A dog's olfactory system is his primary way of processing the environment, and he could be reacting to all kinds of smells that we're completely unaware of because we don't have that kind of sensitive olfactory and very, very complex, complicated, and advanced olfactory system. We just don't have it, but dogs do. And so it can result in a lot of stress and overwhelm. So what are some of the things that we're going to do? I have a picture that kind of represents, I think, all of the things that could go terribly wrong for dogs, how people process holiday excitement and how dogs process it. Look at the difference in the expression on the face of the woman and the expression on the face of the dog. The dog is ready to panic. The dog is saying, "Let me out of here. Oh my gosh." The girl is all smiling and happy. She's got kind of a death grip on this dog, and we see the dog is showing us all kinds of stress signals. And talking about body language is another whole hour of a webinar, but you can see that we don't normally see the whites of the dog's eyes. We see the wide tongue, the corners of the mouth pulled back, the dog's ears pulled back, and we can imagine how stressed and how tense the muscles of that dog are. So we have in this picture a representation of the total disconnection that can happen unless you're prepared to empower your dog with agency. Your dog needs to trust that you will step in and prevent something like this from happening, because a dog has just so much ability to process this kind of stress. All right, let's look at number 2, compliance versus consent. In this picture, the dog is obviously not consenting. It should be clear to everybody. There's no consent here. There's a lot of force. And because this is a very kind dog, the dog is tolerating it, but is highly stressed. So compliance versus consent. We can force our dogs to comply, but unless they're performing the things that we're asking them to do with consent, we can create a very stressful situation. So mental exercise creates pressure. Whenever we ask our dogs to obey us, to perform tasks, there's a certain amount of pressure that we're putting on our dogs. And emotionally intelligent dogs can handle that very easily. They're grounded. Learning is stimulating to them. We ask them to perform a task and they're saying, sure, glad to, and they do it, and it's great, and there's a connection there. But when you have an emotionally distressed dog, they can't access that thinking and learning part of their brains while their nervous system is focusing on surviving danger. So if you see a dog that processes an ordinary thing as threatening, a visitor coming into the house, if a dog sees that person through the lens of trauma and fear, the thinking part of his brain isn't working because he doesn't need it when he's focused on surviving danger. If he sees it as danger, then it's danger for him. So if we start to give instructions to a dog and we expect him to process it with that learning part of his brain, but the learning part of his brain is shut down when he's processing danger, he can't process it. He can't he can't understand it. He can't get to the part of his brain that he needs in order to process that. So it results in creating a lot more confusion and a lot more anxiety. So let's look at emotional intelligence for a minute and what it looks like. And, you know, any dog, your dog or any dog, can be emotionally intelligent in some situations, but emotionally distressed in others. So this doesn't mean that the dog is always this way, because moods and feelings are constantly in flux, aren't they? They change. But let's look at what emotional intelligence looks like. First of all, a dog can communicate without conflict, and he trusts that his needs will be met. So a dog that is barking at the end of the leash and saying, there's danger out there, it's danger, danger, listen to me, and you're saying, be quiet, stop that, you're yanking on the leash, the dog is saying, no, listen to me, listen to me. So the escalation increases and increases because the dog is communicating a need, but he's not being heard. So that's where emotional intelligence breaks down. If a dog can communicate a need and trust that that need will be met, then he is functioning with emotional intelligence. He's socially comfortable. He assumes that people are going to be friendly. So when a guest comes into the house, he goes, oh, a new person. Let me go check that person out. So he's curious. He self-regulates his emotions. He chooses to relieve stress positively, and he can disengage from things. So if he sees something that's a little scary, he can, he can walk away. He can move away from it. He's playful. So Junior would have been playful if it was a friendly dog that jumped into the ring with him. And an emotionally intelligent dog is happy. He's happy most of the time. Chance is an example. He is one of the happiest dogs I know. He's always happy. He's always ready to play. He's always ready to engage emotionally in something. So yeah, I see a raised hand. I'll get to you in just 1 minute, okay? So let me give you an example of how emotional intelligence can function. And I'm going to give you an example of my dog, Radar. Radar is a COVID puppy. So he missed out on a lot of the socialization opportunities that he would have had as a puppy. And so when the UPS man or the mail delivery or a FedEx delivery arrives, in the beginning, he would go into full-fledged barking, panicky barking. Oh my gosh, there's somebody coming to our house. Danger, danger, danger. So I worked with Radar, and I won't go into the details of that. It's something that I cover in my academy program, but I worked with him over a period of many months. And what he does now is when someone comes to the house, he'll bark. He'll go to the door, he'll go to the window, and he'll bark as an alert bark. He'll let me know somebody's there. And I'll say, oh, somebody's there. Thanks for letting me know. And he'll go to the door, he'll go to the window, he'll bark, and I say, thanks, that's good. Thank you very much for letting me know that. And he'll go to the window, he'll come back to me, wherever I happen to be. Most of the time I'm at my computer, surprisingly. And he'll go to the window and he'll come back to me. And when he comes back to me, he'll do some grounding. Maybe he'll put his paws on my lap and I'll say, thank you. I'm so glad you let me know that. I wonder what he's bringing us. He's probably bringing us something. And then I'll just go on to narrate. Narrating and talking to your dog is one of the techniques that I teach. So I'll tell him. And then he will, because his needs are being met, because I'm hearing him, I'm saying, yes, I see what you're barking at. I know that there's somebody there. He will eventually self-regulate. He will disengage and he'll resort to playful behavior. He'll go and get a bone and start chewing on it. He always has a lot of chewies around. So he'll go find a chewy and he'll start to chew on it. And he is able to self-regulate and relax. So emotional intelligence doesn't mean that the dog ignores stressful events. It simply means that the dog is able to process it correctly, that he trusts that his needs will be met. He recognizes things that are threatening and things that are not threatening. He doesn't see everything new as threatening, and that's where we want to get with our dogs. So let's quickly look at number 3. And when we're focusing on task-focused approaches, we're not recognizing the dog's needs. So we need to focus on emotional well-being. So when Radar went to the window and barked because the FedEx truck was parked and the guy was walking toward the house carrying a big thing in his arms, instead of telling him to be quiet and stop barking, suppressing that feeling, or instead of dragging him away and putting him in another room where he couldn't see what was going on, I said, yes, I see that. Because the dog's feelings had to be acknowledged. And the ground rule that we practice for emotional well-being is that the dog is more important than the task, and the dog has a right to say no. So in the beginning, when I was first starting to work with Radar with this barking at the delivery people, I didn't tell him to stop. I said, I see what's going on. I see what you're distressed about. Would you like to come over here and chew on your bone? And sometimes he said, no, I need to keep barking at this. I said, okay. And then I waited, and eventually, of course, the man left. The truck went away. And then I asked him, are you ready now? Would you like to come and chew on your bone? And if he was ready, then he would say yes. So this brings us to the 6-step process that I talk about a lot in other ways. And some of you may have already downloaded this PDF that explains all of this. If you haven't and you would like it, you can send me an email and I will be glad to send it to you. And you know how to reach me by email. All you have to do is reply to any email from me, not the emails from Zoom, but the emails from me. Just hit reply and say, send me the PDF for the A-Stack method, and I'll gladly do that. But basically what we're doing, and it's what I did with him, is you acknowledge the dog's feelings. Don't deny them. because that's how you build trust. That's how you start to develop emotional intelligence, as you recognize that the dog has feelings and you acknowledge them and you validate them. I see that that's the way you're feeling. So accommodating those emotional needs can take a lot of different forms. Sometimes it's just talking the dog through it. Sometimes it's getting distance away from the thing. So if you're walking the dog on a leash and he is upset about another dog approaching, it might be that getting distance away from that is the best way to approach that, the best way to handle it. Then you simply accept the dog in front of you. And as I said that before, it doesn't mean that you just, stay stuck in that one spot, that the dog is always going to be upset. I accepted the fact that Radar was upset about a delivery person coming down our driveway. So I let him express his feelings about it. And then I asked him what he wanted to do. And agency is the bottom line, always getting the dog's consent, because agency means that the dog believes that he has control over the things in his environment that impact his well-being. And if he believes he has control, then he's not helpless. When you feel helpless, you feel afraid. Helplessness and fear kind of go hand in hand, right? I'm helpless. I have no control over what's going to happen to me. That instills fear. So let me get to the 3 practical things that you can do right now to help your dog. I needed a drink. All right, number 1, relaxation. Number 2, movement. And number 3, patterns. You can relax with your dog. You can allow your dog movement. And you already have lots of patterns and routine in your daily life. And you can leverage those and make those pleasant and enjoyable for the dog. So let me give you some examples. Relaxation. Just sit with your dog and just relax. We call it co-regulation. In my training programs, we do a lot with co-regulation because it is necessary for survival. We all need to do that. We all need to feel in touch with and in contact with other living beings around us, whether it's animals or people or even nature. We need to be in contact with that. So just take slow, deep breaths, relax breaths. Don't force it. Sometimes people have said, I do this and my dog gets even more stressed. And it's because you're exaggerating the inhale. And when you exaggerate inhaling, that triggers alertness, because breathing is a pattern, isn't it? We inhale and we exhale. And it's the natural pattern where we're moving from relaxed to alert, from relaxed to alert. When we inhale, it's alertness. Exhale is relaxing. A sigh is a long exhale. So if you concentrate on breathing that feels normal, it feels calm, it's not forced, it's not exaggerated, it just feels relaxed. And if you sit beside your dog or near your dog, whatever feels comfortable for you, look at your dog's eyes. Are the eyes soft? Make your eyes soft. You don't have to make eye contact with your dog unless you want to. Decrease the muscle tension. Are your shoulders relaxed? Is your jaw clenched? Is your brow tense and furrowed, or is it relaxed? So think about consciously relaxing the different areas of your body, and just breathe with your dog. That's all it takes. It's not complicated. It's not, anybody can do this. You don't have to have any training to do this, right? Let's look at movement. So give your dog freedom to be curious. Create a felt sense of safety. Dogs love to use their noses. So let them hunt for things, let them sniff, let them forage for things, give them things to lick. Simple things like lick mats or stuffed Kongs or chew toys. And people say, yeah, they'll go through a stuffed Kong really fast. Well, that's okay. Let them go through it at whatever pace they want. Hide treats in a place where your dog feels safe. Scatter food on the ground and let them hunt for it. One of the things that I do routinely when my dogs come in from outside and they're really riled up and excited, I'll scatter food on the floor and let them hunt for it. Because the fact of sniffing, hunting, eating, chewing, all of that has a calming effect on the dogs. And they're moving because they're moving around and hunting for the food. So give them time to process all their sensory experiences. Back to the example that I gave a minute ago of the dogs going to greet a stranger. If the dog wants to retreat and approach, let the dog do that at their own pace. So don't coax the dog to approach the stranger if they're not ready. The dog's going to be ready when the dog's ready. So approach and retreat is something that you can allow the dog to do that on his own terms, in his own way, and allow the dog to approach the person and sniff. And caution your visitor, your guest, that if the dog wants to sniff, allow the sniffing, but don't reach out to pet the dog, because just because the dog is sniffing the person is not permission to be touched. It's two different things. So make sure they understand that. And finally, patterns. Patterns for embodiment, resilience, rhythm, balance, proprioception, and the neuroception of safety. Remember, behavior, feelings, emotions start in the body. They start with the nervous system. So when you get your dog to embody patterns, you all have patterns. When your dog asks to go out and potty, he has a pattern and you respond to it. You meet his needs. When it's dinner time, there's a pattern for that. There are patterns for lots of things. I have patterns that I taught one of my dogs, Radar, to bark on cue. So one of the things that I do to help him settle down is I have little cue words and I ask him to bark. I'll ask him, I'll say, good morning. I'll say, do you want to go bye-bye? Or can you say bye-bye? I'll ask him how old he is. And he's 4 years old. So I taught him to bark 4 times. Next year, I'll have to teach him to bark 5 times. But all kinds of little things, little rituals that you have with your dog, those are all patterns that help to create calmness. When my 2 of my little girl dogs, when they come inside from being outside and playing and being all riled up, they come inside and I have one door closed and I get to the door and I say, you ready? Are you ready to go in? And then I count to 3. 1, 2, and on 3, I open the door. So when they hear me say 1 and 2, they stand at the door and they stand there quietly because it's a pattern that I've created for them. And when I say 3, They expect me to open the door so that they can run into the house. And then the next thing that's going to happen in the pattern is I'll scatter some treats on the floor for them. So they'll run around and find their treats, and then they'll go to their beds and they'll chew on their bones. And so it's a step-by-step calming process because there are patterns that have been introduced. And again, in my program for emotionally intelligent dogs, we do a lot of pattern work, and the patterns help the dogs to become calm and focused. All right, so to summarize the path to self-regulation, we start with reactivity. That means that the event happens and the dog reacts instantly. That happens a lot, right? And people tell me all the time, the reactivity happens so fast, the dog is fully engaged in the reactivity and I don't have a chance to respond because it happens so fast. And that's characteristic of reactivity. So what we need to do is create time between the event and the response. So one of the ways we do that is to introduce distance to create a sense of safety. And then we introduce the element of choice, and we do that with patterns. We teach the dog you have a choice. You see that event taking place, the person walking the dog down the street, you have a choice about how you're going to react. You can engage with that, or you can choose to disengage. And when dogs discover which choice feels better to them, they're going to choose what feels better, because why wouldn't they? Right? So they can choose, dogs learn that they can choose to disengage. And then finally, we have self-regulation, where they can observe the event, and because they have agency, they feel that they have control over the things in their environment that impact their well-being. And so because they have that control, they can then choose to engage or to disengage. And that's the path. It's not a quick path. It's not a simple path. There are lots of ups and downs, but that's where we go with it. So your first step is to create a sense of safety. And you do that with the 3 practical things that I just told you. Relaxation, create a sense of relaxation for your dog. Give your dog opportunities to move, to find things, to discover things. Don't insist on immobilization by saying sit and stay and lie down and watch me and stop moving and stop barking. Give the dog an opportunity to move, because movement creates a feeling of safety. And you can do that in controlled environments within boundaries. It doesn't have to be uncontrolled. And then finally, take advantage of the patterns that already exist. Think about the patterns that embody safety for your dog. Think about the things that you do, the little rituals that you have throughout the day where your dog is happily engaged, and then expand on those. So for example, if your dog likes to come and get a treat from you, do the things that I was just mentioning. Scatter food on the floor, toss a treat and get your dog to come back to you to get another treat tossed. So toss treats here and there and everywhere, getting movement, patterns, and relaxation. Those are your 3 elements. And if you can create those, then you will be going a long way toward helping your dog feel calm. And one more thing, and I credit Google for this. I found this quote on Google, but please remember this, that controlling behavior of another individual and manipulating that behavior, those are toxic. That's not normal. We don't have the right to manipulate and control the behavior of another being, of another sentient, independent being. It doesn't align with open and honest communication. And open and honest communication is necessary for a healthy relationship. It's necessary for trust. Okay, so keep that in mind. That is super important. And finally, this dog's emotional cup. If you email me for that A-Stack PDF, I include the emotional cup, a dog's emotional cup, how to fill it. Our goal, if your dog's emotional cup is filled, your dog will be emotionally intelligent. You can't have one without the other. So the things that fill your dog's emotional cup are things that are normal for dogs to do, normal doggy things. We want the dog to have the freedom to move, the freedom to make choices, the ability to control the outcomes of things in his life, and to get unconditional love and attention from the people in his life that matter the most to him. So the old techniques that you may have been taught, social isolation. If your dog is misbehaving, ignore him, walk away from him until he consents to doing things your way. Don't ever do that. That drains a dog's emotional cup. Okay. Don't deny your dog access to the things that are important to him. Reinforcers are not just food. Reinforcers are things like attention, relief from stress, emotional support. Don't deny your dog access to those things. They're going to drain his emotional cup. Predictable routines are important. Having a safe and quiet place to rest. Those are important as well. Okay, so a couple of quotes that kind of sum things up. People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And the same thing is true with your dog. And if we go back to the example of my dogs, the example of Junior, it was very important after that event that I made him feel safe. That was my primary obligation, to make him feel safe, not to teach him to do more agility when other dogs were around, not to teach him to like big fluffy dogs. That was not my obligation. My obligation was to make him feel safe. And if you prioritize that as the way that you can empower your dog, and is by making him feel safe, then that is your obligation. One more quote from Maya Angelou, because why not? She said so many important things. And this is another thing that she said, and something that I want to leave with you, that you do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you do better. And my goal for this webinar is to have you know better, to give you more knowledge so that you know better, so that you can do better for your dog. Okay? And one final slide. I'm going to leave this up for a few minutes because you might want to write some things down. Remember that thing I told you to write down, Holiday 10? This is what it was for. So I'm going to have a Black Friday sale, because why not? Everybody else is. Why not do it too? And I have really put a huge discount on 3 things that have been very, very popular. If you have a puppy in your life, if you plan to have a puppy in your life, the housebreaking course is awesome. It gives you a real set of step-by-step plans to follow that. I also have a guide for winter holidays, which I cover a lot of the things that I didn't have time to go over, specifically food and drink and parties and travel and noise and all of those things. There's included in that, there's a video that I made with a veterinarian where we address noise sensitivity, not only from the behavioral perspective, but also from the medical intervention perspective. As a veterinarian, she was certainly qualified to talk about that. I'm not a veterinarian, so I can't address the medical point, but to have her in that presentation with me, I was able to include medical interventions as well. So that was really great. And then finally, we did a live event recording on October 26th. The cost of that recording now is almost $100, but I've discounted it for Black Friday. Now, that holiday 10 that you wrote down, you see that here? If you use that discount, that coupon code before Monday at midnight, the Monday 11:59 p.m. If you use it before then, you're going to get an extra 10% off of the already discounted prices. So it's up to 70. They're not all 75%, but they're all at least 50% off. You get an extra 10%. So if you copy this this link, make sure you use the https://www and then my name, marilynmealy.com/Black Friday 2023 with a little hyphen between each word. If you go to that link anytime from now until Monday at 11:59 p.m., that coupon code will work and you will get an extra 10% off. Okay? Only for people who use that coupon code. If you don't use the code, you'll still get a discount, but you won't get the extra 10. So that's my little gift to you for showing up. So I am going to stop the share in a minute. So I hope you all have had a chance to copy that link and to also copy the coupon code holiday 10 so that you'll get your extra 10%. And I'm going to stop the share. And I know a couple of people have raised their hands, and I see that there are comments in the Q&A. So I'm going to go to that. We're almost at time now, so I totally understand if the 90 minutes are up and you feel that you have to leave. I totally understand. But let me go to this. Okay, let me go. Okay. Yes. Okay, children squealing on Christmas morning. Okay, so you can't separate her. Yes. Okay. So Patty, are you still here? So, okay. So Patty, if you're still here, what you need to do is practice with your dog the relaxation exercises. Put treats on the floor for her to lick, a lick mat, a Kong toy. Keep her busy, keep her with you, but keep her busy. Okay. And Melanie, you can email me, just hit reply on any of the emails. Yes, I understand some folks have to leave. I get that. Yes, Patty, I just answered your question. You can keep her with you, or you can keep her in the X-Pen, but keep her busy and practice relaxation. If you can keep her with you and do some slow breathing. When dogs urinate, when they greet people, it's an appeasement behavior. Don't let people pet her. Let them talk to her from a distance. Okay. So if it's an appeasement behavior, and if people just talk to her from a distance in a very low-key, neutral voice, that will help with that. If they bend over her and start to pet her, that's going to trigger that appeasement response from her, and it's also connected with urinating. There's a recording, and I will offer the recording. Okay, Patty, another question. If the dog is anxious around other dogs and we had to keep a dog for a friend's emergency, I separated them. Okay. Is it okay that I gave my dog treats when she approached the dog at the barrier and appeared to be relaxed? If the dog is taking the treats and appears relaxed, then that should be okay. Yeah, counter conditioning is it's a complex issue, and it's normal to be confused about it. I understand your confusion. If your dog is accepting treats when the other dog is there, I would give treats to both dogs, honestly, if that would be okay. But if the dog is okay accepting the treats, then that should be okay. Yeah, Pam, 15 people coming for Thanksgiving Day. Clancy gets overexcited and will need to have her own space away from people for part of the time. Good. Petra likes 14 of the people, but is scared to death of the 15th. They have probably met 5 or 6 times, and it is always traumatic with lots of barkings. That 15th person needs to keep, so I guess it's Eli has been inappropriate in trying to get her to respect him. Eli needs to back off and do nothing. It is not his job to get her to respect him. That's outside of his area of expectation. So it's not his job. So he needs to just stand down and do nothing. My plan is to have a safe space in another room with a hallway and gates between her and the family. I can spend part of my time with her to help her relax, and Clancy can be in there part of the time. I can offer Kongs, toys in her bed and crate. She can go out for a walk during the afternoon. We will also talk through this ahead of time and have outdoor time. Yes, talking through it with your dog is a great idea. That all sounds good, Pam. The main suggestion I have is to tell Eli to just not do what he thinks he needs to. He doesn't need to do that. It's not his job. It's not his responsibility. He can just be there as a guest, ignore the dog. He does not have to interact with the dog, period. And I would be really firm about that. Sometimes it's hard to be firm, isn't it? But I would definitely do it. Thanks, Leona. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you, Patty. Laura, thank you. Now, a couple of people, let's see. A lot of people had to leave. Totally understand that. A couple of people had hands raised. And I couldn't address that during that because I wanted to make sure I covered the content for everybody. But if anybody's still here, wants to ask a question and unmute and ask it out loud, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Okay. Laura. Okay. Laura, go ahead. Speak.
I just kind of come back to the same question with this chocolate lab. I've had 3 meetings with him now, and are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Go ahead.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I've had three meetings with this dog, and in every single meeting, the dog has just been not out of control aggressive, but just out of control, like zooming around, shaking his toys back and forth, won't settle down, da 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 da. And, I know that the owner has a lot of events going on and all that kind of stuff, but just the combination of, I mean, how can you tell when that is just like that? Like he's just, a gregarious dog, um, or if something else is going on with that dog. You know what I mean? Like I know that the events around him, his schedule is off. They're not doing things on time. All these things that you mentioned are focusing in on him and um, affecting him. But what is the first step that you would take with that dog? I mean, I could grab him and sit next to him and breathe, but he's like a ton of bricks. You know what I mean?
Manage the environment first.
Yeah.
So are
Or
you meeting?
tell the
So you
owner.
said you had said before that you were meeting with him outdoors in a park?
I've met twice in the house and once outdoors, and all 3 occasions. I mean, it's like a kid that has no ability, for self-control to like walk down the street calmly. He's just not calm. He's all over the
Yeah.
place, like a ton
Yeah.
of bricks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So meet the dog where he is, manage the environment. So if the environments that you've worked with so far are not right, then my guess is you need to get into a smaller space and increase the opportunities for the dog to interact with things. He needs to interact. He's not
Yeah.
going to be suppressed. So does he like to chew? You said he shakes his toys.
He
So
shakes it and he chews like he's a teething puppy,
yeah,
and he's 3.
okay.
Yeah. So that's
So
chewing on me. That's
all right.
chewing on people.
So if he
Yeah.
likes to chew, get chewy things. If he likes to shake, get shake things. So if he whatever he likes, um, get into a smaller space with a minimum of external distractions. So if you're at the owner's house, find a smaller room, ask for a smaller space, somehow close in the area so you're reducing the outside stimulation
Right.
and you're getting him to focus on things that are right there in front of him, and don't give him instructions about what to do. Offer him opportunities. So he likes food, right? He likes
Yeah.
food. Okay. Do food scatters, do hide food, do snuffle mats,
Yeah.
toys that he can find, and so hide chewy things, and let him find these things, but always in motion. Don't try to suppress his movement. Give him opportunities to move, but in a smaller space. I'm not talking about like a tiny closet. I mean,
No, no, no. But where it's just
yeah,
more contained. He's more
yeah.
contained.
So outdoors is too much external stimulation for him. So
Yeah.
if the room in the owner's house is offering too much external stimulation, then ask for a smaller room. So what you're looking for with this dog is creating a moment where he's calm,
That's
because
exactly
you're
right.
saying he's hyper all the time.
That's exactly right.
But just if you can create a moment of calmness, so project it, do some co-regulation, project
Yeah.
calmness for him, but in this environment, allow him opportunities to unwind in ways that make sense to him.
That's
So,
exactly right.
yeah. So try that, Laura. See how that works and let
Yeah.
me know.
It's always tricky with an owner, because you have to
Oh yeah.
communicate that to them that's what's happening with their dog.
Yeah. You
Anyway,
need to work. Sometimes you need to work with the dog and let the owner see the changes in the dog and then have the owner say, "Oh, how'd you do that?" And then
yeah,
the owner can buy in to
yeah,
to
I
the,
know.
rather than trying to tell them you have to do this and this and this because
Oh
there's
yeah, I never do that.
resistance there. Yeah, there's going to be a resistance, right? So the
Yeah.
same, the same thing with the dog. So that's what I would do. I would manage the environment, create an environment where there's as little external stimulation as possible, and then you give the dog the stimulation that you know that he's going to like.
Mhm.
Scatter things around that environment that are going to be supportive and helpful to him. Okay? All right. Anybody else have a hand up?
All right.
Yeah.
It's an open floor plan.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Okay, Andy. Andy, you have to unmute and you can speak. You ready? Andy, can you hear me? Because your hand was up. You need to unmute. Whoops.
Hiya.
There you go.
Found it. It's a long
Okay.
time since I've used Zoom on my phone rather than the laptop.
Okay. Okay.
Right. At the moment, I've got two dogs that are just over 2 years old, or one's just over 2 years and one's virtually 2 years old, and three of their puppies. The oldest dog is the worst behaved out of all five of them and gets very barky, shouty. Uh, Anyone coming to the door, anything going on in the gardens either side, visitors in particular, particularly new visitors, but primarily excited, wants to play.
Yeah.
And so as soon as she starts, then the other adult one will definitely join in and is louder. And then the three puppies, well, sometimes they join in and sometimes they just sort of like, oh, just sod that, leave them to it.
Yeah.
So,
So, okay.
but
So you have 5 dogs and they're all feeding into each other's excitement.
yeah,
So it escalates and you're like a little voice in the background. They're not even hearing you because they're too aroused to listen to anything that you're saying. They're not being deliberately, they're not deliberately ignoring you. It's just that they get aroused. And so that the part of their brain that would
yeah,
process that stuff, that's just not working. So you
they're
need,
just so overexcited.
yeah. So to give you a short, quick answer, because there's a lot going on here that, we could talk about this for days, but to give you the shortest possible answer, Andy, you need to work with one dog at a time. You need to put the others somewhere where they can't interfere. So again, it's about arranging the environment, put the others where they can interfere, and then pick one of the dogs. It's your judgment, whichever one you pick, the one that's most if it were me, I would pick the one that would be the easiest to work with first, just so that I could give myself a little success to start with. I would pick one of the dogs and work with that dog, and I would work with relaxation. I would work with talking it through. It's kind of like I did with Radar and the delivery people. I would talk about what's going on. I would just narrate it without giving instructions. because once you start giving instructions, you're in conflict with what the dog is telling you. The dog is saying, listen to me, there's somebody there, I want to go greet that person. And you're telling the dog, don't pay attention to that, do what I'm saying. And the dog is saying, no, you're not listening. So don't give instructions, because that's just going to create tension. Talk to the dog. Yes, that's so-and-so. Talk to the person, talk to the dog about who's there and why they're there and what that person is like. And that person, just go on and on with a conversation in a calm voice. And then observe what the dog does. Maybe the dog will calm down the first time you do it. Maybe it'll take 5 or 6 times before you see the dog starting to calm down. The dog is going to do what the dog is going to do, but you need to work with one dog at a time. That's my best advice.
Yeah. The younger puppies, I think they'll be pretty much okay straight away on their own.
So work with the puppies first then. Take one of the puppies, not all of them at the same time. But yeah, they're younger, so they might be, more open to responding. So yeah, definitely. If you think the puppies are going to respond better, then definitely take one of them at a time, though. Don't do, if there's 3 of them, don't try to do all 3 at once.
Yeah.
Because,
what I normally try and do is get as many of them as possible out into the garden,
yeah,
or at least the kitchen,
uh-huh.
and try and have some food. I either a sort of like a chewy treat, or scatter some kibble.
If they're responsive to taking the food. So the main thing is you want to get connected to them, not them connected to the food, but you want to get connected to them. You want them to be tuned in to what you're saying to them. So the more you talk to them and encourage them, and remember those 6 steps. The first one is acknowledge the dog's feelings. So if the dog is excited about greeting the guest, say, oh, yes, I know you want to say hello to so-and-so. Let's go say hello. Let's see what they have to say. And be careful about telling the dog what not to do. Puppies are likely to want to jump on somebody. So if that's the case, get the person to crouch down to the dog's level and pet the dog at the dog's level to kind of eliminate that opportunity to jump, because you don't want to get into a situation where you're saying to the dog, yes, let's go greet this person in a friendly way, and then you start telling the dog, stop doing that, stop jumping, stop this or whatever. So you need to be focused on one thing, one goal, which is let's get the dog greeting this person in a friendly way. And if the puppies are predisposed to be friendly to strangers, then yeah, that might be a good way to get started. To work with.
I've got a barrier that goes across the hallway about halfway along it. So the dogs are one side of it, and when anyone comes in, they're the other side of it. So that means that the dog's puppies, whatever, can't get directly at the visitor to jump up. So I normally get them to wait until they calm down a bit, before then getting the guests to acknowledge the dogs.
Yeah, so you could take one of them, leave the others behind the barrier, and then take one of them. You can have the dog on a leash if you need to, or just let one of them come and greet the guests. So they do it one at a time. The key is to work with one dog at a time. As soon as you start to try to work with multiple dogs, then the dogs are more likely to listen to each other than listen to you. That's just, the way it goes.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So one dog at a time. That's your key, Andy. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All
Excellent.
right, you're welcome. Okay.
Bye.
Thanks. Okay, guys, it looks like that's it. I don't see any more. I don't see any more hands up. So I want to thank you all. I know we went about 20 minutes past the 90 minutes that I said this webinar would last, but I wanted to make sure that all of your questions were answered. I'm just going to double check the Q&A one last time to make sure. Angela, you have, yeah, modeling, right. Yeah, okay. Okay, so Angela, let's see, you have Angela and Melanie, you have questions. So, yeah, I have a lockdown rescue Staffordshire Bull Terrier who is very people oriented. He adores attention, but isn't very food motivated and doesn't like toys. He constantly tries to get up onto guest laps for cuddles, which isn't ideal because he weighs 22K and is solid muscle. Yeah, if he's a staffy, I bet he is. I have asked guests not to engage with him or to make a huge fuss as he gets very overexcited. I am not able to separate him as they have a small cottage and he can open doors. Well, good. I would, and jump a 4-foot baby gate. Would I be best to greet guests outside with him so he can sniff, do zoomies, and shake off the excitement for going indoors? You can certainly try that, Angela. You can certainly try having him greet the guests outdoors. If he isn't food oriented and he wants to greet the guests, you can have him get his excitement worked out outdoors. And then when they come in, if he has a hand targeting skill, if he knows how to put his nose on people's hands, you can have, that's a great way to have dogs keep their bodies down toward the floor. So you can have him touch a hand with his nose, and then his reward, if he doesn't like food treats, his reward can be that he gets petting. So touch my hand and then I'll pet you. Touch my hand with your nose, then I'll pet you. And then they can keep their hands down, at his eye level. So he's not likely to jump up. Yeah, I know that breed is super affectionate. They really are. I have connections with some of them, and they're just so loving. They just think they're little lap dogs. So yeah, so teach him that nose touch game, and you can it's really simple to teach. You just put a treat in your hand and let the dog take the treat out of the palm of your hand 2 or 3 times, and then show him your hand, and he'll go touch your hand because he thinks there's a treat there. But as soon as his nose touches your hand, put the treat in your hand. And then after he gets over that, then you can start to have him touch his hand with your nose, and then the reward is petting. So Angela, I hope that was helpful. Okay. Let's see. And Melanie, what do you think about create a funny situation? It is a good thing when there is more distance between them. I'm not sure what you mean, Melanie. Create a funny situation. It is a good thing when there's more distance. Distance is helpful. I'm not sure what you mean by funny situation. If you're still here, Melanie, if you want to add that to the Q&A, I'll give you a second to do that. And then we'll see. Okay. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Okay. I think Melanie's not here any longer. I think she had to leave. So, okay. All right, guys, if there are no more questions and no more things that you want to ask, oh, okay, Melanie, most of the people say stop barking, sit, lay, or whatever. Oh, okay. Yeah, I would not, if a dog is over aroused, I would not tell them to stop feeling what they're feeling. because feelings aren't trained, they're felt. And if you were excited or worried or happy, or if you were feeling a strong emotion, and I said to you, stop doing that, stop feeling that, you wouldn't, yeah, it's weird, right? You wouldn't be able to stop. So if you could just, yeah, make the dog feel a little more relaxed. So I guess funny situation might be make it fun, make it relaxing. Yes, if that's what you mean, go for it. Absolutely. And I wouldn't give those instructions like lay down or sit or stay, not when they're excited. Those are great things to have a dog do when the dog is relaxed and calm, but not when they're just emotionally highly aroused, because it's too stressful and you just create a lot of conflict. So, okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Great. I'm glad we communicated. I'm glad we got that across. All right, guys. Okay. Anything else? If not, I'm going to close this down. And end this webinar. And I want to thank you all. Those of you who ended up sticking around, thank you so much. I hope it was helpful. And I will send out the replay. So bye, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening, wherever you are in the world. Bye-bye.